Hi. I wonder if I can tell you why I no longer trust my feelings and why I would want to recommend not trusting your feelings. This way of referring to it came to me this morning about how confusing this area has been for people, and traditionally very disconnecting area for men and women, where women want men to show feelings more and to have feelings more, and men, as I learned from Alison Armstrong, who studied men for a few decades, don't necessarily trust them, and perhaps for a reason. And is that what happened? That I've come around to see feelings the way men do? Not completely. I guess my way of relating to feelings, to emotions now, is that I like to track them, but not to trust them. And that's what I recommend to anyone who is open to that recommendation. And here's one example from this morning. I woke up in quite a state, really, really worried about my health, and in particular about my gums. Yesterday I noticed yet another receding gum and panicked about it. Another receding sort of pocket around my tooth. And it led me to have all sorts of scary thoughts and feelings about my health, about the state of my self-care, and so on. And the upset was so strong that I was really dreading my day being really affected. And as it happens, I have a really fully spoken for day, many timed appointments. And my first appointment was with a client, and I was really concerned whether I would be, in a good enough state to see the client and to be of use to them. And then I did a little bit of tracking my feelings, if you wish. And even as I started the process, I used Sedona method, experiencing and releasing emotion. Which is relatively short, it doesn't take a long time, but it's still new to me. I've been only doing it regularly and training in it in the last several months. And so even as I was beginning to go into the process, I had this thought of futility, that it's not gonna do anything because this wave of emotion and a stressful thought is just too big, and it will take some undoing. And I went ahead with the process anyway, because that's the practice I now have. And then got up, made the bed, washed and dressed, and had a fantastic session with a client, and good hour afterwards. And it's another example of how the intensity of the emotion is not at all a reflection of the complication of a situation. Now, in this particular example I gave, does it mean that my teeth are not nothing to worry about? Well, they're still they still need addressing, and I still things I need to do about it. And me going into emotion in such a way that it would really prevent me from being able to do to work today, or to do things that I have in the diary today, would not have helped. But then really the point is how the intensity of the stress and the upset and the worry I had this morning was suggesting certain things to me, such as, it will take a long time to have any sense of ability to act, or I won't be able to do things, or lots of self-doubts, and that we're kind of having an overwhelming effect. All of this lifted through not taking the experience of the emotion as it was, or the dread of emotion, because really once I actually allowed myself to experience the emotion rather than somehow be worried about having it or not, to try to have it or believe the literal messages associated with it, then suddenly the overall reading of the situation has changed, and the overall capacity that seemed to be very low at first shifted and lifted also, and very quickly. So the message, the conclusion from trusting the feeling would have been, oh, this is so bad and you won't be able to do anything today, whereas actually by not trusting it but tracking it, so paying attention to it and following it up to allowing it to allowing myself to experience it, and also allowing myself to also release the emotion, has given me a kind of almost surprising sense of calm and capacity and obviousness of what needs to happen, and my teeth need to be attended to, but so do the things I have got booked in my diary today. And the disconnect, or the kind of difference that men and women have between feelings, is almost kind of typical for conflicts. The conflicts, usually tension is about who is right and who is wrong, or how to disprove the other person's position. So they're kind of black and white. They are sort of, trying to discount one perspective and promote the other. And I have a sense that my way of seeing and experiencing emotions now is a little bit of both. So I feel that both men and women, have got a little bit of right insight and understanding into emotions, but not complete, and only combining their perspectives and understandings rather than choosing between them do we get some kind of sensible or helpful picture of what emotions are about, or how to use them. And because look, men say, I'm not a man, and this is my understanding of it comes hugely through Alison Armstrong and my reflections on men I have known and experienced interactions with, that men don't necessarily like being driven by emotions, or for things to be decided by emotions. They appreciate actions rather than feelings, perhaps, or appreciate actions more than feelings, perhaps, and trust actions more than feelings. And yet perhaps don't allow themselves to experience their own feelings enough, and so tend towards suppressing. But they do know something, that acting from feelings is not always reliable, and it's changeable in a way that's not helpful, because feelings change from one moment to another. So they somehow know that feelings are not to be trusted, that part of it. Women, on the other hand, I believe, have learned and understood that feelings need to be experienced, because if they are suppressed, all manner of complications. I wrote a piece about it the other day, that suppression can lead to illness, and there's much evidence about this, as well as we don't emotions do carry information, data in them. It's not that it's just that the data is not to be trusted in its initial form. What the world looks like, what the situation looks like, and what the thoughts you have when having emotions is really not accurate and often not helpful. Anyone who has been on the branch of somebody emoting, or who has been affected by emotion and did something that they later regretted will know that what the emotion says in the moment is not necessarily so. And if we combined those two insights into, yes, it's important to experience emotion, and yes, it's important not to trust it in its literal initial content or message, then we are getting somewhere. And what I recommend as the best option for responding to emotions that I know of is not to ignore them or indulge them, or to believe them, but to track them. And tracking means noticing it's coming up and then following it up in an appropriate way, which for me, from my experiences and experiments and client experiences, what it means is allowing yourself to experience the emotion rather than somehow trying to talk yourself out of it, or fix yourself out of it, or fear yourself out of it. Allowing yourself to experience it, because then it moves somehow the wave of processing, of understanding what's actually happening a little bit further down the road, and then also releasing it rather than being trapped on the roundabout of emoting. Experiencing and releasing. So track the emotion, experience it, allow yourself to experience it, and also allow yourself to release it, so that you, a little bit like I spoke about, used this metaphor before, so that the same with food or oxygen we take in, we allow ourselves to take the energy in, and we release the byproduct, what's not quite kosher, what's no longer needed, but we retain nutrients. And somehow there is a way in which, through experiencing the emotion and choosing to release it, also choosing to let go of it as the next thing you do with it, the byproduct is calm and clarity, or calm and greater clarity. And indeed, this morning, not only I was able to really enjoy my client session and be useful and have a sense of joy as well as usefulness from my work appointment, I also have had lots of really good ideas for future posts and videos, and for this video. And so I find it really fascinating how much distortion or partial understanding exists in the world, and so much so that we then have arguments like the one I mentioned between men and women, or kind of people who are into emoting, people who are not, while so often, so much more often than not, and the truth is not about either or position, but about both. And if we combine the things we see together and sort of allow this to amalgamate or see how these things fit, then we get more understanding of what's actually true, and therefore more use from the information. I hope this has been helpful. This has been Dorota Godby from gentlepower.co.uk, and I do occupy myself with things such as transforming overwhelming disempowering emotion into calm and capacity to contribute to make a difference. And I love supporting highly sensitive people, especially through that process. Until next time.